If you want him to love you madly, stop trying to protect his feelings and start protecting your standards. Because the truth is brutally simple. A man does not fall for the woman who tiptoes around his emotions. He falls for the woman who compels him to confront the parts of himself he's avoided for years. This isn't manipulation, and it isn't cruelty. It's the natural gravitational pull of a powerful woman who refuses to shrink just to make someone else comfortable. Most people underestimate the psychology of attraction. They think affection is built through agreement, comfort, and being endlessly accommodating. But that only creates boredom. What pulls a man in, what makes him obsessed, is the friction created by your self-respect. When you hold a boundary, he feels it. When you say, "I'm not tolerating that," something wakes up in him. You're not insulting him. You're inviting him to rise. You're requiring him to meet you where you stand, not where he would prefer you to be. This is the root of genuine attraction, the collision between desire and discipline. What truly hurts his feelings isn't disrespect. It's the discomfort of realizing he's not behaving at the level required to be with you. That sting is transformative. That sting is the difference between a man who drifts through relationship and a man who becomes anchored to a woman who elevates him. He begins to associate you with growth, not chaos, with challenge, not surrender, with meaning, not convenience. And meaning is what he becomes obsessed with. A woman who understands this stops chasing. She stops over-explaining. She stops trying to fix his emotions like they're her responsibility. Instead, she focuses on her values. She focuses on how she wants to live. She focuses on the direction of her own life. Because nothing is more attractive than someone who refuses to compromise their future for momentary validation. When a man sees you operating with this kind of inner order, he feels compelled to organize himself around you, not because you asked, but because your strength exposes his potential. This is where most people fail. They think they must soften themselves to be loved, but love that requires you to break your spine is not love, it's emotional slavery. Healthy love is built on honesty. Even when honesty stings. If you tell him the truth about his behavior calmly, directly, without hostility, he may feel a sharp internal discomfort. But that discomfort becomes a catalyst. It pushes him to rethink his actions. It forces him to confront the gap between who he is and who he wants to be. And the woman who triggers that realization becomes unforgettable. A man falls in love not when a woman makes him feel good, but when a woman makes him feel responsible. Responsibility binds a man to purpose. Purpose binds him to loyalty. Loyalty binds him to love. This is the chain reaction you create by refusing to betray yourself for the sake of keeping peace. If you want deep obsession, the kind that makes him think of you constantly, pursue you consistently, and commit to you fully, you must become the standard that demands his best. And here's the core truth. Your standards are not high if they require you to sacrifice nothing. High standards cost you something. They require discipline. They require patience. They require the strength to walk away when someone's behavior contradicts your values. And believe me, when you walk away with dignity, instead of begging with insecurity, you imprint on his mind in a way that soft sweetness never could. A woman who says, "I don't accept that," without raising her voice is far more intimidating and far more alluring than a woman who tries to be endlessly agreeable. Men crave something to stand for, someone to rise to, something worth earning. When you enforce your boundaries, you become that something. When you speak your truth, you become that anchor. When you stop being afraid of hurting his ego, you help him grow out of it. This is the paradox that most people refuse to understand. The moment you stop trying to secure him is the moment he starts trying to secure you. Because now he senses that you aren't dependent. You aren't desperate. You aren't emotionally starving. You're grounded. You're sovereign. And sovereignty is magnetic. A man becomes obsessed when a woman challenges him without humiliating him, inspires him without coddling him, and holds him accountable without abandoning her own standards. That combination is rare. That combination is powerful. That combination changes him. And the woman who embodies it leaves a permanent mark on his life. So if you want him to love you madly, stop being the woman who avoids conflict at all costs. Become the woman who speaks the truth, even when her voice is steady and her standards are non-negotiable. Become the woman whose presence commands growth, because the man who wants to stay will rise, and the man who won't rise is not a man you want to keep. Strength attracts, clarity commands, standards transform. And that is the secret to making him obsessed. Respect is earned through emotional sovereignty, not emotional dependence. Because the moment you hand someone the responsibility for your happiness, your stability, and your inner peace, You willingly place your worth in their hands, and no human being is built to carry that weight without dropping it. Emotional sovereignty is not coldness. It is the disciplined understanding that your emotions are yours to manage, your identity is yours to protect, and your stability is yours to maintain. And the person who masters this becomes impossible to manipulate, impossible to ignore, and impossible not to respect. Most people do not lack love, they lack emotional independence. They swallow their needs, they silence their boundaries, and they reshape themselves into what they believe others will approve of. But approval is not respect. Approval is conditional and shallow. Respect grows when someone sees that you can stand alone without collapsing. It grows when your actions match your principles, when your words align with your behavior, and when your value is not up for negotiation. Emotional dependence causes you to chase validation. Emotional sovereignty forces others to rise to your standard. The truth is, dependency destroys attraction. When you rely on someone to regulate your emotional world, you stop being a partner and start being a burden. Your moods become unpredictable, your demands become unreasonable, and your presence becomes heavy. People don't respect what drains them. They respect what strengthens them. Emotional sovereignty is the power to feel deeply without becoming unstable, care without dissolving into neediness, and to love without abandoning yourself. This kind of strength is rare, and rare things naturally command attention. When you practice emotional sovereignty, you no longer react impulsively. You respond intentionally. Instead of exploding when you're hurt, you communicate with clarity. Instead of clinging when you're scared, you pause and reflect. Instead of begging for reassurance, you create certainty within yourself. And this shift changes every relationship in your life. People treat you differently when they can't shake you with fear, guilt, or silence. They begin to see that you are not controlled by their approval or discouraged by their disapproval. You are guided by your own principles. And here's the paradox. The less you depend on someone emotionally, the more emotionally connected they feel to you. Because your independence does not push them away, it frees them from the pressure of having to complete you. No one falls in love with someone who collapses at the slightest inconvenience. They fall in love with someone whose presence brings order, not chaos, someone whose stability creates safety, someone who does not make their emotions someone else's responsibility. People respect those who do what is difficult. Emotional sovereignty is difficult. It requires the discipline to sit with your feelings instead of projecting them. It requires the courage to be honest, even when honesty might cost you temporary comfort. It requires the strength to walk away from relationships that thrive on your weakness. Most people cannot do that. Most people cling, plead, and panic. But those who rise above that cycle carry an internal authority that demands recognition. Emotional dependence, on the other hand, is the enemy of dignity. It makes you tolerate disrespect because you fear losing the person who disrespects you. It makes you suppress your truth because you are afraid of conflict. It makes you shrink your standards because you are terrified of being alone. But loneliness is not the absence of people, it is the absence of self-respect. When you abandon yourself for the comfort of connection, you lose the only foundation strong enough to support real love. Emotional sovereignty transforms your relationships because it transforms you. You stop arguing for your limitations, and you start acting according to your values. You stop seeking attention, and you start commanding respect. You stop giving power to people who haven't earned it, and you reclaim the authority to define your worth. And the moment you do that, you become magnetic, not because you try to be, but because confidence is naturally attractive. The person who respects you will meet you at this level. They won't punish you for your independence. They will admire it. They won't be intimidated by your standards. They will rise to them. They won't flee from your strength. They will feel privileged to hold space beside it. Emotional sovereignty filters out everyone who cannot love you properly and attracts those who can. The world tries to convince you that love means merging, losing yourself, becoming one. But real love is not fusion. It is partnership. Two sovereign individuals choosing each other not out of desperation, not out of fear, but out of alignment. Emotional dependence says, I need you to feel whole. Emotional sovereignty says, I am whole, and from that wholeness, I choose you. That choice carries more power than any desperate attachment ever could. If you want respect, cultivate emotional sovereignty. Learn to soothe your own heart, regulate your own moods, and make decisions rooted in clarity rather than panic. Love fully, but don't crumble. Care deeply, but don't lose yourself. Be supportive, but not self-destructive. Because the truth is undeniable. The person who controls their inner world ultimately shapes their outer world, and the one who commands their emotions commands their relationships. Respect is not given to those who seek approval. It is given to those who embody strength, stability, and self-possession. And when you master emotional sovereignty, you become the kind of person people don't just love, they admire, honor, and never want to lose. Setting boundaries creates attraction because it signals self-worth and stability. Because the moment you decide what you will and will not tolerate, you draw a line that separates chaos from order, insecurity from strength, and desperation from dignity. Boundaries are not walls, they are declarations. They say, I know who I am, I know what I deserve, and I am not afraid to walk away from anything that threatens my peace or diminishes my value. This single truth is magnetic. It pulls the right people toward you and pushes the wrong people out. And nothing builds attraction more powerfully than someone who stands firmly in their own self-respect. People misunderstand boundaries. They think they are punishments, ultimatums, or acts of aggression. But boundaries are acts of emotional clarity. They are expressions of inner stability. When you set a boundary, you're not trying to control someone else, you're controlling yourself. You're taking responsibility for your emotional space, your time, your values, and your mental health. And someone who can do that consistently is someone who moves through the world with integrity. Integrity commands respect. Respect generates attraction. Attraction deepens into devotion. It all begins with self-worth. A person without boundaries becomes unpredictable. They say yes when they want to say no. They tolerate disrespect because they fear losing someone. They abandon their needs just to maintain closeness. But intimacy built on the sacrifice of your dignity is not intimacy. It is self-betrayal dressed as love. And people can feel it. They sense when you're bending yourself out of shape to keep the peace. They sense when your tolerance springs from insecurity, not compassion. And that kind of behavior does not inspire admiration, it erodes it. But when someone sees that you hold steady, that you do not allow your emotions to be controlled by another person's inconsistency, that you will not stay where you are diminished, they wake up. They pay attention. Because boundaries create contrast. They highlight who you are. They highlight what you stand for. They show that your presence is a privilege, not a default setting. And human psychology is simple. People value what is not easily obtained, protected, and self-respecting. Setting boundaries also creates emotional safety. Think of this clearly. People are drawn to what feels grounded. They are drawn to those who act with intention rather than impulse. When you communicate your boundaries, you eliminate confusion. You remove chaos. You remove guessing. You show maturity. And maturity is deeply attractive because people crave stability even when they don't know how to create it themselves. Your boundaries become a source of structure that invites deeper trust. This is why someone becomes more interested when you confidently express what you expect: respect, consistency, effort, honesty. Not through anger, not through threats, but through calm, decisive communication. You're not trying to change them. You're showing them who you are. And if they want access to your life, they must behave in ways that align with your values. That's the beauty of boundaries. They don't require force. They require clarity. And clarity is power. Without boundaries, you will always attract people who take advantage of your hesitation. But with boundaries, you attract people who are capable of appreciating your strength. The ones who are intimidated by them were never meant to be in your life. The ones who are inspired by them recognize your worth. Boundaries are the filter that protects your future from the wrong influences. The truth is, attraction is not built through availability, it is built through quality. And boundaries enhance your quality. They signal that you have a life worth protecting, that you aren't desperate, that you aren't emotionally starving, that you aren't afraid to lose someone who doesn't treat you well. This is the kind of energy that makes someone stop and ask themselves, what do I have to do to be worthy of this person? That internal question is what creates devotion, loyalty, and long-term interest. Boundaries also reveal who is healthy enough to stay. Anyone can be charming when there are no rules. Anyone can pretend to care when you allow anything. But only someone who genuinely respects you will stay when you enforce limits. Only someone who values connection will meet you halfway. Only someone with a stable character will grow with you rather than push against you. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the path to healthy love. And here is the deeper truth. Setting a boundary is not about them. It is about you. It is about choosing your emotional well-being over your fear of rejection. It is about recognizing that peace is more valuable than attention. It is about realizing that the cost of self-abandonment is far greater than the cost of walking away. When you choose yourself, others learn how to choose you. When you respect yourself, others learn how to respect you. When you stand firm, others rise to meet you. Attraction is not magic, it is psychology. People are drawn to strength, clarity, and self-possession. Boundaries are the language of those qualities. They signal that you are not chasing validation. You are choosing alignment. You are not seeking approval. You are honoring your worth. You are not begging to be loved. You are inviting those who are capable of loving you well. So let it be clear. Setting boundaries does not push people away. Boundaries pushes the right people away and pulls the wrong people in. If you want connection that is meaningful, deep, and lasting, you must be willing to stand firm. You must be willing to lose those who cannot meet your standard in order to make space for those who can. That is how you build attraction. That is how you build respect. And that is how you build a life where love does not come at the cost of yourself. Man becomes obsessed when your presence challenges him to rise, not when you chase. Because the truth is simple and ancient. People do not value what pursues them. They value what requires them to become more than who they currently are. Obsession is not born from comfort, convenience, or constant availability. It is born from the undeniable pull of a woman whose very existence demands growth, discipline, and responsibility. When your presence elevates his standards, he cannot forget you. When your strength confronts his weakness, he cannot ignore you. And when your expectations awaken the dormant potential inside him, he becomes deeply, powerfully drawn not to what you give, but to what you require. Chasing a man does not make him commit, it makes him comfortable. And comfort kills admiration. When you chase, you signal that your value is negotiable, your time is easily claimed, and your attention is available without effort. He does not rise for what is already lying at his feet. But when he senses that your world is built on discipline, not desperation, that you choose carefully, not emotionally, something inside him shifts. He begins to evaluate himself. He begins to wonder if he measures up. He begins to feel the pull that only challenge can create. Human psychology is wired for growth. We are drawn to whatever forces us to evolve. Men especially are built to rise through challenge, not complacency. When your presence reveals his potential, when your standards expose his inconsistency, when your dignity shows him the parts of himself he's neglected, he becomes captivated, not because you pursued him, but because you required him to pursue the highest version of himself. A man becomes obsessed when he feels that loving you requires strength, not because you demand perfection, but because you require integrity. You require effort. You require alignment between his words and his actions. And the moment he realizes that access to you depends on the quality of his character, he starts working for it. He starts thinking about you differently. He starts planning, adjusting, improving. The chase is no longer about winning you. It's about becoming worthy of you. And here's the paradox that most people refuse to accept: the less you chase, the more he invests. The more you chase, the more he withdraws. When you stop trying to prove your worth becomes undeniable. When you stop explaining your value becomes evident. When you stop overgiving, he starts giving. The polarity shifts. The dynamic changes. Your presence becomes a mirror that reflects his shortcomings and his potential simultaneously, and that duality is magnetic. Your challenge is not hostility. It is not arrogance. It is not manipulation. It is alignment. You align your standards with your actions. You align your boundaries with your values. You align your expectations with your self-respect. And a man who is capable of real love feels inspired, not intimidated by this kind of woman. She does not seek validation from him. She seeks partnership. She does not beg to be chosen. She chooses. She does not collapse into affection. She expands into purpose. When he feels this, he becomes alert. He becomes intentional, because deep down, every man knows the difference between a woman who wants him and a woman who requires him to evolve. The former is easy. The latter is unforgettable. He becomes obsessed, not because he lacks options, but because you aren't an option, you are a standard he must meet or lose. And loss is a powerful motivator. Men do not fall for ease, they fall for elevation. When your presence brings discipline to his chaos, stability to his impulses, and clarity to his confusion, he feels anchored. He feels seen. He feels challenged in the most constructive way. Not judged, but invited. Not pressured, but inspired. Not controlled, but awakened. And that awakening becomes attachment. You challenge him when you communicate with clarity instead of emotional volatility. When you set boundaries without fear. When you walk away from disrespect without hesitation. When you refuse to participate in relationships that shrink you. When you define yourself instead of being defined. This kind of woman is rare, and rarity creates obsession. Chasing removes all of this. Chasing says, I need you more than I need my self-respect. Chasing says, I will adjust my standards to keep you. Chasing says, your attention is my reward. But challenge says, I protect my value first. Challenge says, my standards are non-negotiable. Challenge says, if you want access to me, rise. A man will rise for a woman who brings meaning into his life, meaning through depth, meaning through honesty, meaning through self-control, meaning through accountability. He becomes obsessed not with her beauty alone, but with the way she makes him feel responsible, grounded, and capable. She becomes the lighthouse he orients himself toward, not because she chases him, but because she stands firm in her power. So remember, you are not meant to run after him. You are meant to walk in your strength until he realizes that to walk beside you, he must become a man worthy of the journey. That is what creates obsession. That is what creates commitment. That is what creates a bond he is unwilling to lose. Men rise for the woman who requires them to rise, and when they rise, they love fiercely, loyally, and endlessly. A woman's strength comes from clarity, restraint, and disciplined self-respect. Because true power is not loud, frantic, or dramatic. It is controlled, intentional, and rooted in identity. A woman who knows who she is moves differently. She speaks with precision. She acts with purpose. She does not react impulsively to every emotion or chase after every person who shows interest. She chooses carefully. She walks with direction. And that kind of woman becomes unshakable. Her presence commands respect, not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. Clarity is the first pillar of her strength. When a woman is clear about her values, her expectations, her boundaries, and her vision for her life, she becomes immune to manipulation. Confusion is the soil where insecurity grows, but clarity cuts through confusion like a blade. She knows what she wants. She knows what she will not tolerate. She knows the difference between attention and intention, between effort and excuses, between desire and commitment. And because she is clear about her standards, she never loses herself inside someone else's chaos. She navigates relationships, opportunities, and conflicts with a sense of direction that makes her grounded, stable, and trustworthy. But clarity means nothing without restraint, the second pillar. Restraint is the discipline to hold back what does not need to be said, to walk away when something does not feel right, to pause instead of react, and to choose dignity over impulse. Restraint is not weakness, it is mastery. Anyone can lash out, overshare, or throw themselves into situations that feed their insecurities. But a woman with restraint chooses silence when silence is powerful, distant when distance is necessary, and patience when patience is wise. She does not chase validation. She does not seek revenge. She does not beg for attention or explain her worth to someone committed to misunderstanding it. Her restraint creates mystery. It creates stability. It creates the kind of presence that draws respect from others because people sense that she is in control of herself. Disciplined self-respect is the third and most important pillar. It is the backbone that holds everything else together. Self-respect is not a feeling, it is a daily practice. It is the way she speaks to herself, the way she protects her energy, the way she refuses to betray her own standards. Self-respect shows up in every decision she makes, who she allows into her life, how she lets people treat her, what she tolerates, what she walks away from, and how she handles her own emotions. A woman with disciplined self-respect does not settle for potential. She embraces reality. She does not stay where she is diminished. She chooses environments that nourish her growth. And she does not equate loneliness with failure. She sees it as space for self-development. When clarity, restraint, and self-respect operate together, they create a force that is both soft and unbreakable. This strength is not harsh. It is not rigid. It is balanced, firm but feminine, grounded but graceful. People feel it when she walks into a room. They feel it when she speaks. They feel it even in her silence. This kind of strength makes her rare, and rarity is valuable. People treat valuable things with care, attention, and reverence. A woman with this combination of traits becomes deeply attractive not because she is trying to be, but because authenticity is magnetic. She does not need to compete with others. She does not need to perform. She does not need to force connections. Her strength comes from the inside, and that strength shapes the world outside her. She knows when to engage and when to detach. She knows when to nurture and when to protect herself. She knows when to correct someone and when to remove herself from the situation altogether. She does not lose her voice, but she also does not waste her voice on those who cannot hear it. Her strength also transforms her relationships. She does not remain in spaces that drain her. She does not make excuses for someone who disrespects her. She does not romanticize inconsistency, confusion, or emotional immaturity. Instead, she becomes a mirror that reflects the truth. People must rise to the level of her standards if they want to keep her. Her presence brings accountability, not chaos. Her boundaries shape the dynamic. Her stability becomes the anchor. And the people who are meant for her recognize this strength as an invitation to grow, not a threat to resist. Life becomes different for a woman who chooses clarity, restraint, and disciplined self-respect. She stops living in reaction to others. She stops trying to earn love through sacrifice. She stops chasing those who do not match her energy. She starts building a life that aligns with her deepest values. She starts attracting people who appreciate her depth. She starts trusting her intuition, honoring her voice, and prioritizing her peace. And the world responds accordingly. Because a woman who governs herself becomes unstoppable. She does not move out of fear. She moves out of intention. She does not cling to what is familiar. She seeks what is aligned. She does not crumble under pressure. She adapts, strengthens, and evolves. Her life reflects her principles. Her relationships reflect her worth. Her choices reflect her wisdom. Her strength is not in how loudly she speaks or how aggressively she defends herself. Her strength is in her clarity, her restraint, her unwavering self-respect. That is the kind of strength that cannot be shaken, broken, or stolen. That is the kind of strength that leads her into a life of meaning, peace, and unshakable confidence. And that is the kind of woman the world remembers.